North Korea will be front and center of this week's summit between the leaders of South Korea and the US in Washington. President Moon Jae-in will jet off in the coming hours. The IMF warns the world economy is facing a delicate moment as it downgrades its global growth forecast for 2019. It maintains South Korea's at 2.6%. Plus, a trade dispute is heating up between the US and Europe after the Trump administration threatens to slap tariffs on more than $10 billion worth of EU imports. Our top story this morning. President Moon Jae-in departs for Washington this Wednesday for a summit with US President Donald Trump. Both leaders hope their talks at the White House can be the catalyst to get stalled diplomacy with North Korea back on track. Our Heung-min starts us off.
Embarking on a whistle-stop trip to Washington for a North Korea-focused summit with his U.S. counterpart Donald Trump, President Moon Jae-in's mission is to hammer home the importance of the top-down approach used so far in the denuclearization talks and the need for North Korea and the U.S. to start communicating again. The South Korea leader is set to leave for Washington on Wednesday afternoon for what will be his 7th face-to-face with President Trump.
This summit is based on the need for both sides to consult with each other and revive the momentum for dialogue after the Hanoi summit. In the U.S., President Moon will continue his top-down approach and look for concrete ways to achieve the complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula.
This summit comes at a time when there seems to be consensus both Seoul and Washington can get nuclear diplomacy back on track, even though the most recent meeting between the leaders of North Korea and the U.S. ended with no concrete outcome in February. South Korea's first couple will arrive in Washington on April 10th local time, upon which President Moon will meet with Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, National Security Advisor John Bolton, and Vice President Mike Pence, respectively. All three, like President Trump, have been vocal about pushing for the complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. Then the summit between Presidents Moon and Trump will take place for about 2 hours at the White House. It'll be followed by an extended meeting with senior presidential aides. Though not fully disclosed, it's likely President Moon may raise the need to loosen sanctions on Pyongyang or provide incentives to North Korea that makes life easier for ordinary North Koreans. The leaders may also cover their military cost-sharing framework, bilateral trade issues, and even a reciprocal visit to Seoul by President Trump in the first half of the year. Bringing the leaders Kim and Trump back to the negotiating table might not be much of a trouble, given that it's not the first and that neither has shot down the idea. But the big unknown is whether President Moon's trip to Washington this week will help find a middle ground between Trump's all-or-nothing strategy and Kim's small deal approach. HeungMin, Arirang News.
U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says Washington's goal on North Korea is the regime's final, fully verified denuclearization and less risk from conventional measures. Pompeo explained before the U.S. Senate Appropriations Subcommittee hearing on Tuesday that the U.S. objective also includes a brighter future for the North Korean people. This is the first time Pompeo has mentioned the risks associated with North Korea's conventional weapons. While denuclearization has been dealt with between Pyongyang and Washington, alleviating military tensions caused by conventional weapons has been left in the hands of the two Koreas. So, with the Seoul-Washington summit just around the corner now, doubts have been raised over whether the South Korea-US alliance is still rock solid following a difference in views over sanctions on North Korea. Kim Mo-kyun with this report.
After the Hanoi summit last February ended without fruitful results, there have been concerns that the ironclad alliance between Seoul and Washington is shaking over differences in their approaches. South Korea has been reportedly asking the U.S. to partially ease sanctions on inter-Korean projects, including the Kaesong Industrial Complex and the tourism project at Mount Kumgang, to use them as leverage in the denuclearization process. The U.S., meanwhile, has been against the idea, as it believes that easing sanctions on the regime would lower the effectiveness of the sanctions strategy. Some have claimed that their contrasting approaches could tear the alliance apart. However, an expert says that such differences in perspectives are a natural thing given the complexity of the denuclearization and peace talks. He also said inter-Korean projects, including the reduction of military exercises and the establishment of the liaison office, were made under close cooperation with the U.S.
The Moon administration has been cautiously approaching the issue of inter-Korean economic cooperation under the condition that it doesn't go against international sanctions, and also has been pre-discussing every sanctions-related issue through working group talks with Washington.
With that being said, President Moon's role during Friday's summit seems even more important.
Though the talks could end without any concrete outcome, I think the two sides confirming each other's perspectives itself is symbolic. Because if their ties start to fall out of shape, third-party nations could have more influence over the North's denuclearization.
However, the deputy chief of Seoul's National Security Office, Kim Hyun-jong, said last week that inter-Korean economic projects are currently not on the agenda for the two leaders' sit-down. Many experts are suggesting that such projects could be used as a corresponding measure for the North.
Now, North Korea is holding major party meetings to discuss its future policy direction. Pyongyang's state-run Korean Central News Agency reports that Kim Jong-un presided over the meeting of the ruling Workers' Party's Central Committee's Politburo on Tuesday. He urged the officials to be, quote, self-reliant, which is seen as an expression that refers to surviving the ongoing sanctions. The agency says North Korea's ruling party's Central Committee is expected to announce future policies on the economy and possibly denuclearization at a plenary meeting on this Wednesday. And these decisions will be ratified by the North's rubber stamp parliament, the Supreme People's Assembly, on Thursday. The International Monetary Fund is warning of a global economic slowdown as it has slashed its 2019 global economic outlook to 3.3%, and that's the lowest level since 2016. South Korea's growth forecast remains unchanged, however. Kim Hyo-sun reports.
The IMF has downgraded its world economic outlook for 2019, warning of a global economic slowdown. It forecasts the world economy will grow 3.3% this year, down from the 3.5% it had forecast for 2019 in January. This is the lowest level of forecast in 3 years. Describing the present as a delicate moment, the IMF's chief economist explained that the global economy will recover during the latter half of the year and reach 3.6% growth in 2020. The IMF pointed to trade tensions, Brexit, and other political uncertainties as some of the risks facing the world economy. The IMF has maintained its 2019 growth forecast for South Korea unchanged at 2.6%. Its World Economic Outlook released on Tuesday also forecasts the country's economy to improve in 2020 with 2.8% growth. The South Korean government stimulus package, including a supplementary budget, is seen as the major reason behind the fund maintaining the country's economic outlook amid a lowered global economic forecast. The IMF also pointed out that South Korea should adopt expansionary monetary policies or credit easing policy in case the economy faces challenges. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
The upswing in South Korea's job market continued in March as the number of newly employed people increased by 250,000 compared to the previous year, surpassing the 200,000 mark for the second month in a row. Data from Statistics Korea on Wednesday shows South Korea's employment rate reached 60%, a record for the month of March, with the number of employed reaching almost 27 million. The health and social services sectors accounted for most of the job gains, but the number of manufacturing and finance jobs, they went down. The unemployment rate in March edged down as well, 0.2% on year to 4.3%. South Korean forward Son Heung-min has found the back of the net once again, this time in an extremely important game for Tottenham Hotspur, the Champions League first leg quarter-final matchup against Manchester City. The deadlock was broken in the 78th minute when Son scored from close range at Tottenham's new stadium, giving his side the 1-0 slim advantage going into next Wednesday's second leg in Manchester. South Korea has banned people from bringing livestock products into the country as part of its ongoing efforts to prevent African swine fever from breaking out here. Lee Seung-jae with more.
African swine fever was first discovered in China last August. Since then, Mongolia, Vietnam, and Cambodia have reported cases of the disease. And with South Korean authorities finding traces of African swine fever on a sausage product brought in by a Chinese traveler last month, Seoul has sharply ramped up quarantine measures. What makes this disease so concerning is that so far it has shown a 100% fatality rate.
African swine fever is a viral disease that occurs only in pigs. It could cause national harm, since the fatality rate is very high. And unlike foot and mouth disease, there's no vaccine.
China has reported more than 100 cases of African swine fever so far. The rising number of cases is stoking fear in South Korea, as China produces almost 700 million pigs a year, or about half of the world's total. Given the rapid spread of African swine fever in China, the South Korean government will amend its control and containment guidelines. It's also advised that South Koreans who visit affected regions take extra care.
When you return from a trip to China, Vietnam, or Cambodia, you should wash and disinfect all the clothes and shoes you wore during the trip.
With the UN Food and Agriculture Organization warning the disease may spread to other parts of Asia, South Korea will begin research this year to try and develop a vaccine. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The tense trade relationship between the United States and Europe is escalating as the Trump administration has proposed tariffs on $11 billion of EU products. For more on this and other news from around the world, let's turn to our Heung-min. So I guess the question really is, why is the US proposing such hefty tariffs?
Well, Mark, the U.S. is considering imposing such tariffs due to EU subsidies that support Boeing's rival Airbus. President Trump tweeted on Tuesday that the World Trade Organization finds the European Union subsidies to Airbus have adversely impacted the United States, which will now put tariffs on $11 billion of EU products. And he added that the EU has taken advantage of the U.S. on trade for many years. The U.S. Trade Representative verified they're preparing a list of European products to tax as retaliation for European subsidies to Airbus, which had been ruled as illegal by the WTO in May 2018. In response, the EU said the tariff was greatly exaggerated, and they announced that they too are making a list of tariffs to counter American subsidies to Boeing. This tit-for-tat tariff started when President Trump taxed European steel and aluminum last year and threatened to impose tariff on their cars and car parts as well if the EU did not agree to better trade terms for American products. In retaliation, the EU imposed $3.2 billion worth of tariffs on U.S. goods last June. The U.S. decision to impose tariffs is expected this summer as soon as the WTO makes its ruling. EU leaders are considering pushing back Brexit until the end of the year, rejecting a shorter delay to June 30th as requested by British Prime Minister Theresa May. The delay would mean the UK can participate in European Parliament elections at the end of May. EU members are still debating on the conditions for an extension, saying the British side must outline a clear plan with credible political domestic backing to justify the decision of the European Council to greenlight an extra extension. A Japanese F-35A stealth fighter has gone missing over the Pacific Ocean. while it was on a training flight with 3 other F-35As. Japanese broadcaster NHK reports that contact was lost on Tuesday evening while the jet was about 135 kilometers off the east coast of Aomori Prefecture. Japan's defense ministry says the pilot is also missing and a search is underway. If a crash is confirmed, it would be the second time an F-35 has been lost to an accident after a U.S. Marine Corps F-35B crashed in South Carolina last September. Last month, the South Korean Air Force received 2 of the F-35A jets, joining the ranks of Asia's few radar-evading warplane operators. A 2,500-year-old mummy of a high priest has been discovered at an ancient cemetery south of Cairo. A group of Egyptologists opened 3 sealed sarcophagus from the 26th dynasty, one of which contained the well-preserved mummy of a powerful priest wrapped in linen and decorated with a golden figure depicting an ancient Egyptian goddess. The 2 other tombs contained a female mummy decorated with blue beads and a father in a family tomb. The Egyptologists discovered the burial site a year and a half ago, and the excavation is continuing as they expect more tombs to be found there.
Time now for our Life and Info segment, where we focus on information that's useful for your everyday life, whether you're watching us in Korea or somewhere else around the world. These days, almost everyone has a smartphone and uses it from the time they wake up to when they go to bed. And today we're going to talk about some useful tips to reduce the negative health effects that come from overuse of smartphones. It's affecting an increasing number of people. I'm happy to say we have our Cheong in the studio to tell us about these health issues and how to reduce them. So, Cheong, just describe some of the issues that can be brought on by excessive use of smartphones.
Well, Mark, the most common health problem is neck pain because people tilt their head forward while using the phone, and that puts weight on your neck. Now, tilting the head forward too long, now that causes repeated stress and pain. Now, your neck is supposed to have a natural curve, as you can see on the left of this picture. But as you keep tilting your head forward for a long period of time looking at your smartphone, that curve becomes straighter. The curve helps to better distribute weight. Now, without it, the neck cannot distribute weight, so you get pain.
Right, well, looking at that picture there, it does look very painful if you do have an abnormal neck condition. And when you take the subway, you see all the rows of people lined up with their smartphones all bending over, looking into them. So it really isn't good. So if you've lost the curve, what can you do to regain it if you're already suffering from this kind of neck pain?
Well, I've got some tips from doctors on just how to do that. Now, why don't we take a lesson?
If the pain isn't too bad, you can just do simple neck stretches, but if the pain doesn't go easily, you could have a physical therapist relax your muscles around the neck in a way that recovers your original curve.
Now, so try neck stretches, moving your left ear toward your left shoulder and then your right ear to your right shoulder. Now, but if that doesn't work, your cervical disc or shock absorber in the neck may be displaced. Then you could have a physical therapist treat you. The physical therapist helps to put the disc back in its correct place and make the neck curved again, using hands to apply different pressures on the neck. Now, this is something you cannot do alone.
Yeah, you need a trained medical professional to help you do that. So it looks like once your neck is straight, it can take quite a bit of time for your health condition to recover, so you feel better again.
True, but if you find about your neck problem early, you could do those stretches and perhaps some therapy, and then your neck will regain its curve. Now, let's take a look at an x-ray. You can see the neck regaining its curve. Now, this patient received therapy over about 2 months. Now, when doing the stretches and therapy, remember one thing, no tilting too long with your smartphone because that'll just cause your neck to straighten again.
Well, good tips there, Cheong. So other than neck problems, what other health risks do we have associated with excessive smartphone use?
Well, evidently our eyes get stressed out too long, because if you look at the smartphones too long, eyes get stressed. Now, but more importantly, looking at smartphones emit blue light. Now, experts say much exposure to this light is harmful to our eyes. First, let's see what this light is. If you look at this light spectrum on the right of the picture, blue light comes from rays on the blue end of the spectrum. Now, we get most of our exposure to this light from the sun. Digital devices such as smartphones also emit this light, although the amount emitted is only a fraction of what the sun emits. But the blue light penetrates all the way to the retina, the innermost light-sensitive tissue of the eye. Now, health professionals say this light is not all bad because it helps us to control our feelings and concentrate better. It also helps us to see things better in the dark. But the amount of time people spend using smartphones and the proximity of these digital screens to the user's face have many doctors concerned about possible long-term effects. Now, let's see what one doctor has to say.
Studies say prolonged exposure to blue light could damage light-sensitive cells in our eyes and increase the risk of deterioration of the macula, which is the small central area of the retina that controls vision.
And I hear as well that if you look at your smartphone while you're attempting to go to sleep, that kind of blue light can prevent you from falling to sleep easily. And that's something a lot of us do as a habit now before we go to bed. Check our smartphone for messages and emails, or even just browse the internet. But to protect ourselves then, our eyes from this blue light is a top priority. Is there something we can do to make sure our eyes are nicely protected?
Well, there is. If you happen to be someone who uses smartphones or other digital screens for a long period of time, one option is to physically block the light with a pair of blue light blocking glasses. Now, they look like regular eyepieces, but they may cost a little more. These glasses may not completely block blue light, but could filter out most of it, so your eyes are less exposed.
Recently, along with eye surgery patients, more students and office workers who spend a lot of time on digital screens such as smartphones and computers are purchasing blue light blocking glasses.
Okay, so a whole new market opening up there with people purchasing these glasses that protect their eyes when looking at smartphones, and you said other digital devices as well. So, Heung, thank you very much for coming into the studio. You look very dapper today, and we appreciate all the work that you put into your report. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mark.
Good morning. Most parts have been seeing some much-needed showers since yesterday, easing the dryness in the air and boosting air quality to very good levels. Well, rain has tapered off, while mountainous regions in Gangwon-do and Gyeongsang-pukto provinces have turned into winter wonderlands in mid-April, and expect to see more snow until tonight. Heavy snow alerts are in place in mountainous regions of Gangwon-do and Gyeongsang-pukto provinces, while southern coastal regions are dealing with strong winds and are under a strong wind advisory. More rain is in the forecast for the capital area, more of these sprinkles, while inland areas will see showers until noon, while Gangwon-do province will receive more snow through tonight. And it's forecast to be one chilly day. Readings in Seoul will stay in the single digits, but expect temperatures to rise to the seasonal average on Friday. Then nationwide rain is in the forecast on Sunday once again. And it will feel nothing like April even in the afternoon, as Seoul will only make it to 9 degrees, Gyeongju topping out at 8 degrees Celsius this afternoon. That's Korea for you, and here's the international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, that's all we have for now. Stay tuned to us here on Arirang TV. Our next newscast coming up at noon Korea time with our very own Lee Ji-yoon. So until then, goodbye.
TV's new program, The Chamber. Every week, The Chamber will discuss major economic issues with top experts.
For those of you guys who are curious about Korea's economy and what goes on around the world, we are here in Seoul, the economic hub of Northeast Asia. So without further ado, let's step into The Chamber.
South Korea is on the verge of falling off a demographic cliff, with radical changes being forecast in all facets of the country's society, including the labor market and the welfare of its senior citizens.
You think, oh, if I'm poor,